I'm Christine Fernandez from Toronto.
I'm Mary Alice Collar. I'm from the St. Louis province of Carondelet.
And I'm G. McKinney from Boston.
And
We are the Novices.
So what I'm wondering is, only being here a few days, I don't know, how did you come to know the Sisters of St. Joseph?
Well, I'm from Brighton, part of Boston, and I had the sisters for 12 years. And one of the sisters that I had in high school was also a principal, had me, and I knew her from her school board, got sick. And I went up to Bethany to visit her. And when I got there, I just fell in love with all the sisters there, so I reconnected with the sisters. And for the last 10 years, I've been up there getting to know the sisters more and more and their families. So that's how I got back involved with the sisters in Boston. How about you, Christine?
So a God of mystery and wonder works in unexpected ways. I did not get my vocation call in a church or a chapel, but I got it at a pub. That's where I met the Sisters of St. Joseph. In Toronto, the Sisters of St. Joseph run Faith Connections, and one of the programs is Theology on Tap. That's where I met the sisters and got to know them, and one of them asked me if I was interested in religious life. And at that time, I didn't know she was the vocation director. I found that out later. But that question stayed with me and, just kind of would not go away.
Okay. Well, I grew up with the Sisters of St. Joseph that taught me in grade school and high school in Kansas. And it's fun to come back to Kansas, in Pittsburgh, Kansas. And when I got to high school, there were a couple of young sisters that I really hit it off with. And one became a mentor for me through college and afterwards. And I just kept staying connected with her and the other sisters, and I went through a real strong conversion experience when I was about 26, and after that started looking into religious life. And of course I did not want to enter the Sisters of St. Joseph because they would remember that I threw up on Sister Alfreda in 5th grade or something. I didn't want to do that. But once I looked at the different congregations, I finally decided to look at the Wichita Sisters of St. Joseph, and it just fit, And I was there for a few years, but, young enough that I wanted to go out and do, I felt called in a different direction. And so I went on to St. Louis to get my master's at Aquinas Institute, and I worked in dentistry and volunteered in pastoral care and parishes. And one day I saw in the bulletin that there was a talk at Aquinas on religious life at a crossroads by Amy Herford. So I thought, I'm just going to go and see what that's about. And I ran into Linda Markway and didn't know she was the vocation director at the time, but wanted her to call me. She called me after about a week, and we sat down and talked, and one thing led to another, and doors just kept opening and opening. So that's how I ended up with the St. Joseph's in St. Louis. So,
See, this book I read once, I forget the author's name, but it was When God Winks. And I think every little time, these little winks draw you there, and it's just put you in the right place, the right time. So I say, things happen. I was at a certain place, God winked, brought me right to there. Because nobody would believe that I'd spend time at a nursing home facility, because I'd pass out if I even saw the word doctor. And just for me to stay there, God was winking, drawing me there to come into the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Right. And I needed an extra piece that drew me back to the sisters, and that I found actually with the Incarnate Word Sisters. I kept pursuing their mission and was drawn to that. And when I met Linda, somebody said, oh, she's a Incarnate Word Sister, and then she became a sister of St. Joseph. And I went, what are the odds of that? That's amazing. And so she put me back in touch. That's why I felt like she was a perfect spiritual or vocation director, because she's like, you need to get some of these questions answered. So she put me in touch with some Incarnate Word sisters. And I was able to get what I needed, and that was to be I was called to be my authentic, real self, which I have been doing since I was 5 years old. That is their mission, making Jesus real in the world today. I knew I could do that, but what was hard about Sisters of St. Joseph's mission for me is standing in the tension between unity and reconciliation. And I realized at that point I had all that I needed, that I just needed to continue to be who I was, and I would have everything I needed. I would have enough, which I often felt like I never had enough. I need a little bit more knowledge. I need a little bit more formation. Oh, well, maybe I need to study a little more. Then I'll be ready to be a sister. Then I'll be ready. And it's like God has for us everything we need.
So you came from healthcare,
Yes.
in dentistry. What were you doing?
I was in online advertising, a field very different from the work the sisters do, even though advertising is part of our world and our life, but a very different type of mentality. But I've always been involved in, very active in social work, and that's what drew me when I found out about the sisters and drew me to them. And when I heard love God and neighbor without distinction, like something just clicked. That's when I was like, yes, that makes sense. It made perfect sense to me.
The thing that, like love, I say to myself, I was in technical support, a black and white world, and then getting involved with the sisters and all their love. It brought color into my world, and it was like great to have color and great to have love. Instead of this, the black and white, this is the way life is. Now you have color, you're over-extending love the neighbor, as you said.
So, which makes it a really exciting time to be in religious life now, the way the world is. I think what draws me even more is when you see the political climate or the wars or the division. Nothing is more comforting for me than to be a Sister of St. Joseph, bringing about that unifying love to our world in our small little way, and knowing that God will take over, the Spirit takes over, and it just continues to unfold. But I love to be able, in fact, I can't even watch the news without some sister being with me, because it's just so depressing. But then I have a companion, or several sisters in my local community, or the wider community that we can just talk through it and somehow come to unifying stance, or something that gives me a little hope just for that day, even if it's just for that day. So
I'm really excited to be here. Yesterday was our first day of novitiate, and what a wonderful way to start our novitiate. Like, there was a celestial event. Talk about God being present. What a grand opening. The solar eclipse was magnificent, and I'm so blessed that I think we all are blessed to be able to go there, to witness that, to be present in the moment.